Aboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Yud Amud Aleph, starting with Daf Kuf Tes Amud Beis, 8 lines from the bottom. The Gemara quotes the Mishnah that states that we must provide at least Daled Koisos of wine, even for the Anim who receive from the Tamchui. Because on Leila Seder, everybody is Bnei Chorin, Bnei Malachim. We must demonstrate that we are free people on the night of Seder. Says the Gemara, asking the following question: Heichi mesakne rabbonim midi da'asi be'lidei sakana. There's a problem of zugois when there is going to be an even amount of cups that are drunk. That will then provide a problem of mazikin. How could the Chazal institute daled koisos when indeed this is zugois? Answers the Gemara, vehatanya. The Gemara continues to ask from the Brisa, Lo yoichal adam trey, lo yishte trey. One should not drink two, he should not eat two. For example, he should not eat two egoizim. He should not drink two koisos. Lo yikanach trey, lo yaset shrochav trey. He shall not clean himself twice, and he shall not then have tashmish hamita twice. These are considered to be zugois, and therefore they can cause a problem of mazikin. Omar Rab Nachman, Omar Kro, Leil Shimurim. On the Leil of Seder, it's called Leil Shimurim. Leil HaMeshumar, Ubo Min HaMezikin. The Pasuk states over here, that's Leil Shimurim Hu LaHashem, Lo Yitzia Meretz Mitzrayim, Hu Alayla Azel Hashem Shimurim, the Kol Bnei Yisrael Daroisam. So Klal Yisrael is protected on the night of Leil HaSeder, whereby the Leil Meshumar Ubamina Mezikin, they're protected from the Mazikin, even from Zugois. That's one answer that Rav Nachman gives. Rava Omar, Rava says, Koi shel bracha mitzaref l'toiva ve'en mitzaref l'ro. The Koi shel bracha, referring to the third Koi, the Birkat HaMazon, that's mitzaref l'toiva and not mitzaref l'ro. And therefore, when it gets to then the Birkat HaMazon, that's the third Koi, whereby when the next kos comes, it's a first kos, it's not going to be the fourth kos. Says the Gemara, third teretz, Ravina Omar, Arbo kosi takinu rabbonan derech cherus. The Chazal were mesakin daled kosos derech cherus. Kol chad v'chad mitzvah ba'api nafshehu. And each one is a separate mitzvah. We have the first kos as a separate mitzvah. It's true, all daled kosos is to then demonstrate our cherus. But each one has a special different part. The first kos has its own unique mitzvah of kiddush. The second one has its unique mitzvah of sipor sisat mitzrayim and the beginning of halil. The third kos has its distinct mitzvah of birkas hamazon, and the fourth kos has its distinct mitzvah of the halil. Lo yaset tzrochav trei, which we quoted before. The Gemara said that you cannot do tzrochav Tashim Shamisha twice. Ask the Gemara, Amai Nimlachu. Behold, he changed his mind. In other words, after the first time, he was satisfied, doesn't have any more of a type of an urge, and therefore, when he did decide a second time, it was considered to be a new. So therefore, there shouldn't be a problem of zugois over here by tzrochav. Omar Abaye Hochi Ka'omar Lo yoichal trei v'yishtre trei v'lo yaset shrochav afilu pam achas. One should not eat two zugois, should not drink two koisos zugois, and therefore after either he drinks two zugois or he eats, then he should not have tashmish hamita even once, because that could cause him to be endangered. Dilma cholish umitra, may become weakened and become sick. Now Chazal say in another place, when a person has tashmish hamita twice, l'shem shamayim, like the Gemara says, it's a segula to have banim zechorim, that certainly is not going to be a problem of zugois. Here it's talking about when he doesn't have the kavanah l'shem shamayim. On that the Gemara answered that in achanami, there's no problem of zugois over here, but nonetheless, even once is a problem if there already was zugois, because he's already potentially in a state of danger, whereby he shouldn't even then perform tashmish hamita after eating or drinking zugois. Tonu Rabbanon, the Gemara brings the following brayso: shoisek felim domoy beroshoy. That means if a person does drink or eat zugos, then the blood is on his head. In other words, he's causing himself danger. Omar Rav Yehuda, Amosai, when is this so? The Gemara qualifies. Bizman sheloi ro'ah pnei hashuk. That's if in between, let's say, the two koisos, he doesn't then go out to look at the shuk, the marketplace. Aval ro'ah pnei hashuk harishus biyodo. But if he does go to see the face of the marketplace in between the two koisos, then he's able to do so. It's not considered to be a problem with zugos. Omer Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi said, Chazin lei Rav Chananya bar Bibi, the akol kosa hava nofik, v'chazi ape shuka. He was careful that every single kos he would then turn and go outside to look at the shuk, so there would not be a problem of zugos. All this is true is if he does not go out to the derech. But if he remains home, then there's not a problem with zugos. However, Rabbi Zera says if he goes to sleep right afterwards, it's like he's going on laderech, and therefore he will have a problem of zugos. Rav Papa said, if a person goes out to the outhouse, that itself is considered latzeis laderech, and therefore he'll have a problem with zugos. The Gemara now questions that which we said before. The Gemara made a distinction. If it's latzeis laderech, then there's a problem with zugos. However, if he's going to remain in his house, it's not a problem. Ask the Gemara, ubebeisoloi veho rava mani kishure. Rava was careful to count the pillars, the beams in his home. Why? Because he wanted to make sure that there was a separation, the zugos. When Abaye would drink a kois of yayin, the woman who reared him, she held two koisos to make sure that he did not drink a zug. Similarly, it tells over, V'Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak ki hava shosi trei kosi, mankit leishamei chad kosa. When Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak would drink two koisos, his shamish would stand before him with a third kois. Again, that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak should not drink a zugos. Chad kosa mankit le trei kosi mat betrei yadei. If he would drink one kois, then the shamish would hold two koisos in his hand to avoid problem of zugos. So how can you tell me that when one remains in his house, there's no problem of zugos? Answers the Gemara, Adam Chashuv Shiny. The Adam Chashuv, he's different, he's more susceptible to the mazikin, and therefore he has to be more careful even when he remains in the house. Omar Ula Asara Kois Ein Bohem Mishum Zugos, even though it's a pair, but when it comes to 10, there's not an issue of zugos. Ula L'Taimein Ula, according to his reasoning, that he states somewhere else, the Omar Ulo, Va'amre lo memaisni satana. Others say it was taught in a brayso. Asoras koisos, tiknu chachamim bebeis ha'ovel. The chachamim were mesakin, want to drink 10 koisos in the beis ha'ovel. V'isal gedaitich asar koisos yesh bohem mishum zugos. If you want to say indeed that there is zugos when it comes to the 10, then hechi kaimin rabbonim v'taknu milso the asidei sakana. How could the chachamim mesakin 10 koisos in the beis ha'ovel if that would bring a takana? Would bring a sakana? Elamai, it must be there's no zugos when it comes to 10. Aval timanyo yesh b'hem mishum zugos. But when it comes to 8, there is zugos. Rav Chizav, Rabbi Rav Huna, the Amrei Tavai, they both said no shalom. In the bracha of Birkas Kohanim, it says v'yasem lecha shalom. L'toiva mitztarev l'roa lo mitztarev. There, it says Yisa Hashem ponav eilecha v'chuneko v'yasem lecha shalom. The 8th word is shalom. So he says, since it says shalom, l'toiva mitztarev l'roa lo mitztarev, and therefore the 8th shall not be a problem with zugos. Aval shita yesh b'hem mishum zugos, but 6 there would be zugos. Rav Yosef Damar Chavai, they both said no, even 6 is not a problem zugos, because in Birkas Kohanim it says vichuneko. It says Yoher Hashem ponav elecha vichuneko. It says 5, and the 6th one would then, the vichuneko would separate from the next word, whereby it separates the zugos. L'toiva mitzarech l'roa lo mitztaref. Aval arbo yesh b'hem mishum zugos. However, 4 there will be zugos. By Rav Damar Travayu v'yishmerecha. It says in the beginning of Birkas Kohanim, it says Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha 3. And therefore the third, v'yishmerecha, separates between the fourth, whereby the Tov mitzdaref l'ra lo mitzdaref. V'oz the Rava l'taimei. The Rava afkinhu l'rabonen ba'arbo koisois. The Rava, he would then take out the Chachamim, his Talmidim, with Daled Koisos. That means to say, when he would escort them away, he would then give them Daled Koisos to drink. How can he do that? If indeed Daled Koisos are mazikin because of Zugos, then he would never do such a thing. The Gemara points out, one of the Talmidim did get damaged, he did get hurt as a result. The name Rav Bar Lizvoi, one of the Talmidim, did become damaged. Rava was not concerned. Why? The Gemara explains, the Omar, because Rava said, Hahu mishum de uzban bepirka hava. And the Rashbam explains that this Talmid, he, so to speak, deserved it. Why? Because shehiksha li b'shas hadrasha ubayisheni barabim. He asked the questions on me in the public to embarrass me. And therefore, he would go out of his way to ask in public in order to then try to then lower my status and my stature amongst the Talmidim. So he deserved, so to speak, to be punished. Rav Yosef, he said to me, Yosef, this is referring to the shade. Shada, he said, Ashmadoi Malka de Shadi Mamuna hu akulu zugi. The Ashmadoi is a Malka of the Shadim who are appointed on all of the Zugos. Umalka lo ikri mazik. And if it's called a Malka, then it's also not referring to somebody who's a mazik, because a Malka is beneath his dignity to then be a damager. So therefore, one shouldn't be concerned, but if he is careful, he has the right to do so, because sometimes it does indeed be mazik. There are those that say another version in the other direction. Adirabba, on the contrary, malka, because it's called a malka, the shade, ratachnohu, my de boy ovid. It has a angry type of personality, and it does what it wants. The Melech, the king, has the rights to break down the fence that belongs to a person to protect his property, in order to then make a path for himself, and nobody can protest. So therefore, indeed, it's a mazik, whereby you have to be very careful in order to then protect yourself from this type of shade of zugos. Amar Papa said, Amar li Yosef, Sheda betray katlinon. With two we will kill. With a pair we'll kill of two. Be'arbo loy katlinon. However, with four we will not kill. Be'arbo mazikinon. But with four we will damage. Betray bein beshogi bein b'mezid. Whereas two, whether it's beshogi or b'mezid. However, be'arbo b'mezid in beshogi gloy. V'ish tili asked the Gemara. V'ikri v'nofak. And if a person forgot and it happened that he went out and he then drank zugos, maitakante, what is his remedy? Explains the Gemara, linkoi zikpo diadei deyamine biyade de smola vizikpo v'smola biyade de mina. He should put his thumbs, his right thumb into his left hand and his left thumb into his left hand and hold it like one. Another zugos means that there's two, and it's an affront to the fact that there's one and only one Hashem. You might think there's Chalila Shtei Reshuyos, like two hands. Therefore, you put the two together as one. V'neima hochi, and say the following to the mazik. Atun va'ano hatlasa. You and I, we are three. V'ish mi'alei, and if you hear a voice from either what sounds like a man's voice or a woman's voice, Doma that said, Atun va'ana ha'arbo, we are four, meaning we are zugos. Neimolei, tell him, Atun va'ana ha'chamisha, we're five. Vishmi'alei, and if you still hear a voice, Doma atun va'ana ha'shita, you and I, we are six, which is a zug. Neimolei, say to him, Atun va'ana ha'shiva, we're seven. Hava uvda, the Gemara recounts the following Maisa. Ad meya vechad. This went on until 101. That means that he said he was 100, and then you said to him, you and I are 101. Upoka shida. And the shade, it burst out. It became then bursted. It blew up. And therefore, this is a way to then desist. Even if one accidentally was in a state of drinking, let's say 2 koisos, there's a way to remedy this. Alpi this yesoid over here, alpi this segula, putting one's thumb into each hand, and then declaring you and I are indeed 3.